It is over. The biggest World Cup in history is over. And we realize you may be recapped out at this point. Everyone's gotten their hot takes in, and your attention might be turning back to MLS or USL or looking ahead to the rest of the world's domestic leagues kicking off.
Or just taking a break, a much-needed break after that Super Bowl of soccer. So we're going to keep this recap part tight and then try to cover some ground you haven't heard anywhere else.
So, looking back at the tournament that just ended, the headline was as inevitable as France seemed to a lot of people. This Spanish team was that bitch. Absolutely throttled Argentina after doing the same to France. I mean, come on, that's insane.
Totally insane. Just great players, great game plan, great team spirit. And let's talk about that Spanish team for a moment, because it wasn't what we've been accustomed to, right? At least us historians or those lovers of history, that whole Barcelona, Real Madrid duopoly, and this concept that I talk to my students about, morbo. It's not exactly rivalry. It's more the stuff that fuels it, right? Phil Ball comes up with this in his great book called Morbo. It never dies. It grows bigger with each encounter. So he says stuff like, the terrible beauty of Spanish football is that someone somewhere hates your guts and will always be delighted to demonstrate this when your team comes to town, end quote. Morbo encapsulates this tension between clubs that are divided by centuries of conflict, history, language, politics, food, you name it. Look no further than the Barca-Real Madrid rivalry, El Clásico. I'd argue that when it comes to La Furia Roja, or simply La Roja, this morbo has died, or temporarily put in a football-induced coma.
But in the final, for all that Spanish dominance, Argentina managed to keep it scoreless, and until the final whistle, you wouldn't have been surprised if they'd pulled a smash and grab, some set piece or moment of magic from Messi, a Spanish defender slips, anything. But in the end, Argentina had no answer.
They were waiting for, that comeback, right? They were waiting to get down to then just, have another one of these remarkable endings.
Yeah, and they ran out of endings. And who would have thought Argentina would look so ordinary outside of Messi? And I apologize if that's not showing enough respect for their football culture, something we were accused of by a lot of Argentine fans after last week's show. And I was ready to make the case again this week, but Argentina made it for me.
Go ahead. How'd they make that case for you?
I mean, stupid fouls, followed by the ritual let's surround the ref to complain about the stupid fouls being called. Paredes coming into the game, not to play, but to throw cheap shots, hoping someone would retaliate. Cholo's son, Diego Simeone Jr., doing the same, and then giving up the goal because he was pulling his socks up at the top of the box and didn't follow his man's run. I mean, it was just pantomime villain stuff, right? The most impotent machismo.
And you can't forget my good friend, I jest, Enzo Fernandez. Really letting his team down, just like he lets Chelsea down. And as Tony Cruz summed it up, football won. Spain's leading newspaper, El País, pointed out, quote, an unprecedented achievement. Spain's men's and women's national teams are both world champions, end quote. Marca comes, Spain didn't just win a final, it saved soccer.
And then on the other side of that, as the BBC put it, with a little bit of national bias, it cemented Argentina's reputation as the villains of international football. Scotsman Craig Burley said, quote, Argentina were a complete and utter disgrace, both with their performance and their antics. We expected the antics. We expected the thuggery. We expected the off-the-ball stuff. But we also expected a lot more on the ball.
Yeah, and that's surprising coming out of a Scott's mouth. I'm sure he was quite thrilled with England not getting to the final, which is what I wanted, Kirk. I said that last time, right? I'm back in London now, and an England-Spain final would have just been amazing on Sunday.
Yeah, and at least it got us the absolute chaos ball consolation game. Speaking of complete and utter disgrace, got to say, the spectacle of Donald Trump taking a break from committing war crimes in Iran and sicking federal troops on citizens, handed out the trophy, and then, like our jock sniffer in chief, refused to leave the Spanish team alone as they got their celebration photo.
And that halftime show,
Oof.
was it as bad as people say? I mean, I kind of like the Muppets. You go. You're a Hollywood guy.
Honestly, I skipped most of it. I just found the whole thing absolutely abysmal. So yeah, one legacy of this World Cup is a super stretched, super cheesy, honestly, like the worst American excess at the end. And I think it was for the benefit of one guy, Donald Trump, sitting there with Infantino. Why is the U.S. national anthem played before the game? Jennifer Hudson is amazing. She's an incredible performer. We shouldn't have played our anthem. We shouldn't have had a super long halftime show. That stuff was unnecessary. And so one legacy of this World Cup.
It's almost like the Diana Ross missed penalty kick, right? That's what's going to be talked about, as part of the legacy of this tournament. It just doesn't need to be that way, right?
Let the U.S. assimilate into global soccer a little bit more than we were trying to make global soccer assimilate into U.S. sports. There's a balance that can happen, and I think the final tilted way the wrong way. So yeah, one legacy of this World Cup is, as U.S. Soccer Vice President Nathan Goldberg Crenier, I'm not sure how to pronounce his last name, wrote in The Guardian, quote, "Infantino's Faustian bargain with Trump has stained football's biggest stage," unquote, which is undeniably true. Every touch point from Trump was an insult to the sport and or human rights.
As a historian, I have to remind you that this stuff has gone on before. It is not a new thing in World Cup history. Mussolini used the 1934 World Cup as part of his fascist project. Military dictatorship in Argentina rigged the 1978 World Cup while having political prisoners right there. They could hear the cheers of the crowd. It was so bad that the Dutch team boycotted the medal ceremony after losing the final, the great Johan Cruyff team. Russia and Qatar's World Cups were also instruments of sport washing by authoritarian regimes. So this is not new.
And so to Tom's point, football's biggest stage was already stained before Trump smeared himself all over it.
Let's add another legacy of this World Cup. The success of the expanded field and some really phenomenal soccer being played for 6 weeks. Highest goals per game since 1970. And with that expanded field came more games, which meant more revenue, which means that this tournament was, for FIFA anyway, a commercial juggernaut.
Yeah, we will wait to hear how the revenue stuff played out in the host cities and whether they got anywhere close to what they were promised. But it was the most lucrative sporting event in history, and FIFA will net over $9 billion this year. But that profit, right, is coming on the backs or out of the wallets of people spending absurd amounts of money on hospitality packages and tickets, with FIFA taking its cut from the seller and the buyer on every sale and resale.
And I'm sure you've seen some of those videos of people outside stadiums being asked what they paid to get into the game and what they did for a living. I mean, it was like kind of bread and circuses, coliseum, spectacle for the 1%. And is that good for all? Is that FIFA's vision for the future of football?
Why, I like hedge funds are people too.
There we go. We had
like
to get
I'm a
that
good
in.
friend of Baron Trump's friends. They all want to come. They get the VIP tickets. But let's end on a good note, Tom.
Come on, let's end on a good note. Come on, we're positive folks here. It has been reported that the World Cup was great for the dating scenes in host cities.
Yeah, lots of tourists coming in, combined with big watch parties in public squares, games being shown in bars. It apparently led to lots of hooking up. It's the magic that happens when you force people who have gotten used to interacting through screens to interact IRL.
Sorry to sound like your dads, but go outside and get off your phones. I wonder what some of the babies are going to be called, like McTom, an A? I don't know. I mean, we'll see.
Not a lot of
US
Enzos.
soccer. No. And probably not a lot of Mauricio Pochettinos. As of this recording, he's still weighing U.S. Soccer's offer to stay on through 2030. So it's coming in the next hours or days. We'll see.
We will see. And again, we like him. He's a good coach. I was a huge fan of his when he was managing Tottenham. But did the U.S. play even one complete good game under him? I don't think so. So has the guy who declared that American sports reward losers won anything in his career besides the Coupe de France during COVID with $1 billion PSG team?
No, we didn't win anything with Spurs.
Okay, it's not the time or place for that. But come on, U.S. soccer. Let's show some self-respect. And I'm saying U.S. soccer because, as Tab Ramos pointed out, we don't currently have a sporting director. We hired Matt Crocker from England. He spent a couple of years listening and learning and talking about how hard it is to align youth soccer standards in the U.S. because we're very big and diverse, and that's something everyone already knew. And then he vowed that big things were coming, and then he quit in April to go work for the Saudis.
And if Poch decides to move on, I think he will, Tim Howard, who we have some respect for, good friend of our listener, Mitch Decter, touted Roberto Martinez and Patrick Vieira as strong potential replacements. We loved Martinez at Everton. Seemed like a nice guy, good football mind, but he's also the guy who couldn't get Belgium in that golden generation, moving forward, or Portugal past where they were expected to be. Is that going to be a step forward?
And is U.S. soccer so insecure that we're not allowed to even say the names Brian Schmetzer or B.J. Callaghan?
You know how to say B.J. Callaghan in Spanish? Can anyone say Luis de la Fuente? Not a big name pro coach. He took over the Spanish U19s back in 2013, and he's grown with the players, kind of like Scaloni, right? Credit Spain for recognizing his work, but also makes you wonder what Tab might have done had he been promoted to the senior team after doing great work with the under-20s.
Remember, Tab stepped down as youth technical director and U20 coach in 2019 after leading the U.S. to 4 consecutive U20 World Cups and 3 straight quarterfinals.
2017 and 18, Tab's team won our country's first 2 CONCACAF U20 championship titles.
But the answer for U.S. soccer is usually from abroad, so we wait for Pochettino. Now, some countries would have the sporting director lined up first, but again, we're an insecure soccer country, and Pochettino knows it. That's why his agents made sure that the discussions with Milan came out before the World Cup started, create a little panic at whoever's working at U.S. soccer. And that's why, right around the same time, he had the arrogance to agree in an interview that he is a founder of soccer in the U.S. after 18 months of objectively mediocre management of one senior national team.
Just want to slam my microphone against the wall on that one. Come on, know your history, right? I mean, and let's get something clear as well. Did Poch discover anyone in the current squad? Recruit a dual national like Klinsmann? Uncover a diamond? Find Balogun like Berhalter, right? Or Tab? Freeman was already a youth men's national team player. These were all Gregs, all Tabs. Come on.
So if you re-sign Pochettino, you are entrusting him with bringing through the next generation, which is even more promising than the current one. Do we believe that he is that committed to U.S. soccer that after slugging it out for a couple of years in CONCACAF, he won't leave for a sexier club job?
And maybe Messi, right? This is the Messi World Cup. Will demand he comes to Miami. And with that segue, we conclude our World Cup coverage. But as we pivot back to our beloved U.S. soccer history stories, we'll say it's been fun to be, in a small way, part of the World Cup media.
Yeah, and it made us appreciate even more a legend of U.S. soccer media, J.P. Dellacamera, the iconic play-by-play voice who is retiring after calling, and I had to double-check this, 18 World Cups, 11 men's and 7 women's, going back to Mexico in 1986.
It was his shot heard round the world call in 1989 that announced the U.S. men's national team, the re-arrival in the World Cup, the first modern World Cup for them. And then there's Paul Kennedy of Soccer America, who recently announced that after covering 13 World Cups, he too was retiring. And in a recent column, PK wrote, quote, "The most basic answer to why this World Cup struck a nerve is the sheer humanity of it all. The recognition that others from different places and with different skin colors and different languages are more like us than we think. They are just as kind and friendly and funny as we think we are."
Now, one voice of American soccer media who is not retiring is Alexi Lawless, who did his best over the last 6 weeks to cover every stereotype of the American idiot. Now, on the one hand, it was kind of fun for me and Tom to see the world catch up to the version of Alexi that we've been talking about for a while. But I suspect that early on, Alexi or his agents did a little back channeling to make sure that the whole Thierry and Zlatan stuff didn't go too far. Like, I think he was really stung week one, got off that desk for a bit to the friendlier environment of Clint and Carly, because there was a noticeable shift where Thierry and Zlatan started making a point of saying they agreed with Alexi. It was like part of the broadcast is they'd give him shit and they'd roll their eyes, but then they would also turn around and go, no, like Alexi say. But here's the thing. We've said it before, and we saw it during this tournament. Alexi made a choice when he went to Fox. He decided to embrace the MAGA dummy persona. It gets him paid way more than the critics make him sad. So every viral clip of Thierry or Zlatan clowning him was more attention. And as long as, at the end of the day, he was treated like an equal, I agree with Lexi, then the net to Alexi from this World Cup was a higher profile. And I would bet a nice raise on his next contract.
I'm going to disagree with that. I think he takes a hit that he can't recover from, but we'll see. And we can talk about this in a whole episode, right, on media and its expansion from the U.S. World Cup perspective. As for us, after a tense renegotiation, we'll be back with a third season of An American Game soon. We also have a couple of really exciting collaborative projects coming up.
But first, like World Cup finalists, we are going to take a little break to rest and recharge. So if you don't want to miss new episodes when they drop, please take a minute to click subscribe. You want to let them pile up unlistened to? That is sad, but it is up to you. It's not like we're going to quiz you on them.
Or will we? Just subscribe. And we'll be back because this is An American Game.